What's up guys, my name's Dychronic here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 PvE specials in Destiny 2. Now these weapons were ranked on a slew of different criteria, including first off DPS, so basically how much damage it can do and how much fire rate it has. Secondly, it was measured on its total damage, so how much damage it can do over its total ammo capacity. As a third criteria to compare the two, oftentimes it's useful to compare the time to use all of the ammo. If one takes twice as long to use all of its ammo and it's about the same DPS and total damage, the one that can use it faster is usually better. The fact that a weapon is kinetic or energy damage also matters significantly, because kinetic weapons do more damage against non-shielded targets, whereas energy weapons do more damage against shielded targets. You'll see in a lot of my DPS tests, because Kali does not technically have a shield, all of the kinetic weapons that are exactly the same as energy weapons do more damage than their counterparts. An example would be the sniper rifles known as Fake Christ Foul and Long Shadow. Both of these are pretty much the exact same weapon, same RPM, same stats, but the Long Shadow, because it's kinetic, did more damage. And lastly, there are a lot of perks that increase the amount of DPS or total damage you can do. For example, different armor and weapon perks that increase the total ammo you have. For example, Field Prep gives you more total ammo, very underrated perk that I feel like a lot of people really need to take a look at. On top of that, oftentimes DPS is important to have a faster reload, so any armor and gun perks that make it so you can reload faster are important. Range also increases the amount of damage you can do over range, but oftentimes when you're dumping into a boss, range is really not that significant. And lastly, any perks that increase the amount of damage you can do, like Rampage, Kill Clip, Armor Piercing Round, makes it so you can do more damage to shield damage. And lastly, Tractor Cannon. I also measured on this list the amount of damage you can do with Tractor Cannon if the weapon is void. All of these DPS tests were performed on the first boss of the Last Wish raid, the boss known as Kali. Every single one of them was done at 597 or 600 power, depending on the weapon power that I had, which makes them about the same amount of power advantage. There are a couple of reasons why I use Kali for these DPS tests. First off, you have full ammo right off the beginning with the raid banners every single time. Secondly, she is a raid boss. Even if the different raid bosses and enemies in the game have different vulnerabilities, maybe some weapons will be much better against certain enemies, at the very least, I'm giving you the numbers for a raid boss, so in the very least, they will be useful for that raid boss. Because they are so varying, no matter where you go, there's always going to be some differences to exactly how much damage you can do against different enemies. And the last note I wanted to mention is that there are exotics in this list. Technically, in the PvE meta right now, you want to reserve your exotic for the power weapon, for your whisper, for your 1,000 voices, for your sleeper. However, I still wanted to put exotics in this list because there's a lot of exotics that really are underrated, and I wanted to show people. And on top of that, at the very end, I'll be mentioning my entire list of all the weapons that DPS tested, as well as a bunch of honorable mentions that you really need to take a second look at. So if you're looking for some legendary weapons, don't worry, at the end, I'll have the full list of all the weapons so you can see them all. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it with number 5 in this top 5 countdown, which is going to be the legendary shotgun known as Zenith of your kind. Now, this is the raid layer shotgun from Eater of Worlds. It can be found in Leviathan, and it has been used ever since it came out. Now, even though it's not a Forsaken weapon, this weapon deals out some incredible amounts of damage. First off, has one of the highest total ammo without field prep of 22. Secondly, it is a void shotgun, meaning it can be used with tractor cannon, and it is the rapid fire shotgun, which means it fires incredibly quickly, pretty much the same fire rate as the Kalos shotgun. Now that being said, its DPS with tractor cannon is fairly similar to the Kalos shotgun with trench barrel, so it definitely gets put much farther down the list. But overall, a lot of people are sleeping on this weapon because it is still very powerful, and I highly recommend you take a second look at it because it is amazing. Coming up at number 4 in this top 5 countdown is going to be the exotic trace rifle known as Coldheart. Now this came as a bit of a surprise to me initially, especially considering it was 16th in the list for DPS. However, it came in 2nd in total damage. Now that being said, it may be the fact that it is just a trace rifle. A lot of trace rifles come with a lot of total damage because they take a lot longer to dump that total damage than things like the Kalos shotgun. But even then, I feel like this weapon is somewhat being overlooked. It is also a lot easier to get than the Kalos shotgun. So if you find this weapon or you just have it in your inventory, give it a try. Moving on to number 3 in this top 5 list is going to be the Lord of Wolves exotic shotgun. Now this is a very weird shotgun. It has more of a burst fire type of feel with it, but it's kind of a shotgun at the same time. It's more like a precision frame burst shotgun, and it's very weird, and it also has some pretty incredible DPS as well as total damage. Now again, it is an exotic exotic weapon, so it will throw out your using of the Whispers of the Worm or your Sleeper Simulant. But if you've seen my top 5 heavy weapons for PvE, you have seen that there's a lot of other weapons that can do some pretty impressive damage, including the linear fusion rifles. So check those out and check that video out if you want more information. Other than that, it uses its total ammo pretty quickly at around 11 seconds, whereas the 100 RPM shotguns use their total ammo in around 7 seconds. But it also has a higher total damage than those 100 RPM shotguns, but it is a little bit less DPS as well. Honestly, give the Lord of Wolves a try. You might be very surprised by how much an oomph this weapon can punch. Next up, coming up at number 2 in this top 5 countdown is going to be the exotic sniper rifle known as Borealis. Now this weapon has been out on PlayStation since the beginning of the game, came out on Xbox and PC pretty much right around the 1-year mark, and this weapon absolutely tore it up before Warmind. It had the highest total damage out of any weapon in the entire game, even the Darcy, which had the highest DPS, and every other weapon that was in the game, it had the highest total damage, and I gotta say, it is repping it with the highest total damage for the special slot. Now that being said, again, it is an exotic weapon, so we'll be taking away your ability to use Whisper and Sleeper. However, it has some incredible amounts of total damage. You will be very surprised. And on top of that, Borealis can also be Void, which means it can be used with Tractor Cannon if your teammates are running Tractor Cannon. And what makes this weapon so very amazing is gonna be its Ioniq Return. So basically, if you break a shield with that specific shield color, so if you break a Void shield with its Void damage, you're gonna get Ioniq Return on your weapon, which means every bullet from then on until you reload will be double damage, making this 72 RPM sniper rifle, which is the highest impact in the game, double the damage of that impact. That being said, I'm pretty sure they were going to nerf Borealis. I don't know if they've done it already. I don't know if they're going to do it in the future, but they were going to nerf it so more things would count as a reload and end Ioniq Return, because it used to be in the past, all you have to do is use the Hunter Dodge to get your ammo back and it would not affect Ioniq Return. You could also use Rally Barricades, Lutefaction Rifts, pretty much anything that wasn't a direct reload, you can use it and it would give more ammo directly into Ioniq Return. And you could basically keep it for infinite amounts of time, which is why my DPS numbers show just the double impact number. Either way, this weapon can deal some incredible amounts of damage when you get Ioniq Return, and I highly recommend you check it out. And finally, coming up at number 1 in this top 5 countdown, the number 1 DPS in entirety of special ammo, the number 3 total damage in the entirety of special ammo is the Kalos Legendary Escalation Protocol Shotgun. Now this one's definitely not going to be a surprise to a lot of people. This weapon definitely deserves to be number 1 for a lot of reasons. First off, it is a legendary weapon, which means it can be used with Whisper and Sleeper and all those things, making it very versatile. Secondly, it is a 100 RPM shotgun with rapid fire frame, making it more around 180 RPM, making it the highest damage or highest DPS shotgun archetype in the game. And lastly, how would you like to do just 50% more damage than any other shotgun in the game? Yeah, that's what this weapon has. It has Trench Barrel. You punch something, you do 50% more damage for 4 seconds. That is mind-blowingly insane. And considering this weapon takes only 7 seconds to release its entire capacity, you really only have to punch the target twice to be able to get the full effects of the Trench Barrel. And with targets like Kali being able to do 1 million damage directly to her noggin, and the fact that she does not melee you when she's doing her wasa lasa wasa phase, you can really dump incredible amounts of damage, including you can also do incredible amounts of damage to Morgith. A lot of people use the shotguns for Kalos shotguns against Morgith because it's faster than Whispers of the Worm. A lot of people use these shotguns against strike bosses to an absolute dump on the boss. It is ridiculous how much damage you can do with this weapon, and it is ridiculous that no other gun in the game can even measure up. Well, actually, technically, the Borealis with Tractor Cannon affecting the target with 50% more damage on top of that, technically, the Borealis can do more DPS, but only by a little bit, actually, which really goes to show that this weapon, even regardless of its Trench Barrel, does some incredible DPS. Anyways, that was the top 5 for you guys today. Let's go ahead and move on to the honorable mentions as well as dishonorable mentions, which were ones that are kind of broken and that really needs to be fixed. First off, honorable mentions, things that had some pretty impressive DPS or things that you should know about certain weapons to make them better DPS, but fell short in a lot of categories. First up, Perfect Paradox, Hawthorne, and Badlanders, all 100 RPM RPM shotguns had some pretty impressive DPS at 3rd, 4th, and 6th place in DPS. However, they also had very bad total ammo damage. And on top of that, Badlanders being an energy weapon means that it does less damage per shot against non-shielded targets, like I said before. Next up, some sniper rifles. The Twilight Oath and Kalos sniper rifle, both with box breathing, can do some pretty impressive full total ammo damage. However, their DPS is much lower than their non-box breathing counterpart. Dustrock Blues and Retold Tale, both 55 RPM shotguns with full auto, making them more around 108 RPM. Both do some pretty impressive DPS because of the fact that they have full auto on them, but are still not as good as a lot of those rapid fire frame 100 RPM shotguns. That being said, if you find a low RPM shotgun with full auto, that weapon is very, very good. So you should definitely give it a try because its DPS is much higher than it seems. Next up, let's talk about some dishonorable mention. A lot of guns that underperformed that I thought were going to perform a lot better, or some things you should know about the meta. First off, Toil and Trouble, a 45 RPM shotgun that can be gotten from Zavala. That weapon that seems really good roll from Zavala because it has a full choke or smooth bore, has accurate rounds, it has a ranged masterwork, it has full auto on it, and it did some pretty terrible impact. It had worse damage than Perfect Paradox, even though it had much more impact. I think the gun is broken, and I did so many tests. I ran in there with that shotgun so many times, and I could not get more damage for a single shot into the head on Kali than with the Perfect Paradox. So I feel like this weapon is broken right now, and you should just avoid it because a 45 RPM shotgun loses out to a 100 RPM shotgun in a single shot damage by 50%. That is not okay. Next up, Merciless, one of those fusion rifles that's supposed to do impressive boss damage. It has some impressive DPS way back in the day before any DLC, and wow, it has fallen to the bottom. Now, fusion rifles right now are really, really bad. They're at the bottom of the list for these DPS lists. Main Ingredient, Aerentil, FR4 are literally the bottom two in my list. Not far behind is going to be Telesto, and just above that, Merciless. These fusion rifles are going to get a 15% buff. I'll update my docs with a 15% buff when they do get that. However, I think on top of that, these weapons really need some attention, Bungie, because these weapons suck. Now, I understand fusion rifles are supposed to be the comfortable weapon, you know, easy to use at decent ranges from close to mid-range. However, they're just not even close to the shotguns right now, and nobody wants to use them. And that is pretty much it. If you wanted to see my documents, it's actually a public Google Docs. You can find them in the description down below. You can see all of the different DPS tests I did, my primary weapons, my secondary weapons, my heavy weapons, they're all there. If I update them, they're all going to be there, as well as all of my different notes. If you wanted to know how I did certain things, why I did certain things, I left a lot of notes there, as well as you double click on certain columns, you can see how I did my math. A lot of things I had to test my own RPMs. I had to figure out exactly what was what, and that is gonna be the video for guys today. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hashtag made it to the end of the video. I did put some fluffers at the beginning, so here's one right now if you wanted to see some more Halloween fluffers. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it all the way to the end, and if you're watching this on the premiere, hello! Thank you for watching. My name's Dychronic, and I will see you guys on the next one.